What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of FPL Hotline. Joined, as always, by C4. What's up, C4?
Hi.
And Tazz. What's up, Tazz?
What's up?
And Gasch. What's good, man?
How's it going? Before we get started, just want to give a quick shout out to a couple of guys here. Andy Kudrick, Ali Pastelan, and Mikola Kutsina. They asked me to do this, and I was under the influence, so I made a promise, and I didn't want to break that. So those guys gave me all the soccer knowledge I know, the good and the bad. So cheers.
They're big fans of the show.
Huge. I hear they're huge fans. All right, so this week we're going to talk about transfers. We're getting close to the start of the season here. We've had a couple of big transfers in the last week and a half here. Chelsea are buying everybody on the market that's available, it seems like, building a whole new team. So, yeah, you know what? Let's start there. Let's start with Chelsea. They brought in Kai Havertz last week. He's been priced at $8.5 million. Tazz, what are you thinking about that? You bringing Havertz in at $8.5?
I don't know how he's gonna fit in Chelsea. There's a lot of what ifs about all these Chelsea signings they just made. Kai Havertz last season in the Bundesliga, out of 30 appearances, he scored 12 goals and 6 assists, which was pretty good for him. But like most of his goals and assists came after 2020 started, which he scored 10 goals and 5 assists, and that's where he played a more of a higher up role, like as a striker, number 10, not as like a winger as he'd played before. So, to me, it comes down at $8.5 million. He's good, but he's more of a risk because if he plays on the wing more, he won't produce as much. I'd rather have Werner for $1 million more, or even Pulisic at the same price, who's more set in stone, and what you're going to get from him. We have some experience with him from last season. But also, if it comes down to owning, Havertz at 8.5 and then a 5.5 midfielders, your budget midfielder, I would rather own Ziyech for $5 million less, $0.5 million less, and then own like a £6 million midfielder. That's just my take on it. But I know other guys are bigger on him.
Right. C4, what are you thinking?
I kind of agree with Taz of there's a lot of what ifs with Chelsea now that it looks like their transfer business is done up front and they're attacking in their mid. I personally I like Havertz just looking at him, but I'll probably wait to see how it shakes out between him, Pulisic, and Ziyech in terms of which one goes into my midfield. I'll start with Werner, but as for adding him or any other Chelsea midfielder, I think we'll wait.
So you're starting without a midfielder, but you'd consider any of the three of them depending on how it goes?
Yeah, I think maybe once I use an early wild card, I think Havertz would probably be the one I bring in, but I'd like to just see how it all plays out.
Right. Gash, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think he's a really solid player. I think this is a case of one of the transfers that will help out the other assets on the Chelsea attack from a fantasy perspective. Although I don't think Havertz will be rewarded for it through fantasy points, if that makes sense. Lampard likes to play a 4. It seems like he's trying to play a 4-3-3 with one kind of midfielder sitting deeper and then 2 number 8s that are more attacking. And Havertz himself has said that he prefers the number 8 role to like a number 10. So he actually plays a little bit further back. He likes it more. So I think it'll be probably Havertz and Mount in those 2 number 8 roles, and then either like a Conte or maybe a Kovacic rotating in there sometimes in the holding midfield role. So I think him playing through the center is really where he shines. Then you have, as these guys have mentioned, like Ziyech and Pulisic coming off the wings and Werner through the middle. So I really think it'll help it, their attack, become a lot more fluid. Although he might get a lot of, pass before the assists rather than direct assists or goals.
Right. So you think he's more of a real life asset than a fantasy asset?
Yeah, right. And I would keep an eye on, other Chelsea assets a little bit more now with adding to the team.
Right. Taz, what do you think?
The thing is, though, now with signing of Kai Havertz, it's coming and then Pulisic comes back, it's gonna be more of like a Chelsea's turning into like a Man City where you're like all these players are, like at a rotation risk. You don't know who's gonna exactly be nailed on, and it's something that is not gonna be as bad as Man City where you can't predict stuff, but it's something to be like. I believe it's better to wait on for it and see who's in form and who's actually like starting and like producing for the Chelsea attacking.
I kind of feel like waiting for that as well. But how long do you think you're gonna wait? Like 3-4 weeks or maybe more?
I think it depends. I know, not so sure when Pulisic's supposed to get back, but even then, I have to see if you have to see like how much Frank rotates. Frank, like for most of last season, what he was kind of like a manager where like if he was winning with his side, he would keep that side for the next games. So if that's the case this season, then you know who the nailed on players are and they're performing well. Then 2 game weeks is more than enough. But it just depends. I feel like there's too many what ifs going into the season around Chelsea.
Gash?
Yeah, I don't really think it's a case of too many what ifs. I think the players, Havertz is always going to be a nailed-on starter unless he's performing terribly for the money they're paying for him. I can't ever see Havertz being benched unless he's playing really, really awfully or he needs a rest after a long stretch of games. I really think that he's being brought in as he's their marquee signing of this big window, and so I think they're going to try to focus everything going through the attack around him. And then I could see it more with their argument with Pulisic and Ziyech on the wings. Who's more informed, but I don't think you can drop Pulisic right now once he comes back from injury, based on how he's playing post lockdown. And Werner kind of the same. You're always going to start Werner over Olivier Giroud and Tammy Abraham. So maybe Ziyech would be the one to watch the most. But even then, I think he's still got a spot pretty locked.
Yeah, good point about him being the marquee signing. Did he end up being the most expensive player in Chelsea history? I know he was close. It was between him and Kepa, right?
Yeah, I think they paid more for Havertz than Kepa. Yeah, and I love bringing up
Kepa too. Oh man, that's great. Yeah, so Chelsea brought in all these attackers, but they definitely needed some help on the defense, and that's where they brought in Thiago Silva. A little bit older. I believe he's 36 now, right? Turning 37 this year.
36 in a few weeks.
Well, so is he 36? Or he's 36 until he turns.
And then +1.
Yeah. So you guys considering him at all? Gash?
No. Short answer, and I think the reasons are pretty simple. Like we mentioned, he's old. I don't really see him adapting too well to the league. I think he's slowed down a lot, and he can be almost eaten alive. I think he will shine as maybe more of a leader in the back for Chelsea. But as an FPL asset, I don't really see him having much value at 5.5 million versus some other defenders. You could get Doherty for $500,000 more, or even some of the 4.5s that are cheaper with might get you more points.
Yeah, I think he'll actually do a decent job in real life. Kind of locking up that back line and helping be a leader, like you said. But I don't see many attacking returns, many points in fantasy wise. I don't think he's enough to shore up that defense by himself. I mean, we know they signed Chilwell, but we'll get into that in a second. But Tazz, what's your opinion on Thiago Silva?
Same thing as Gash. For $5.5 million, I'd rather get another either upgrade to Doherty or even go for like a wing back like Wan-Bissaka or even Tierney from Arsenal. I just feel like center backs at that price, not too well.
Yeah, it's tough. It's rare to get a center back at that price. C4.
I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but to me that just adds another what if. Like, it seems like there's so many Chelsea defenders now, and I couldn't confidently say what their preferred back four is when you just think of all the names they have back there. I also want to wait and see if they do end up bringing in that new keeper from Liga before considering one of the Chelsea defenders as an asset.
That's a good point, but you'd have to think that Thiago's nailed in the back there. I mean,
I'm more
he just started the Champions League final.
Yeah, I guess I'm more concerned about when you look at now you have Barnes, Alonso, Aspi, James. Like there's Rudiger, Zuma. Like what's the four? And as we said, Lampard's someone who likes sticking with the winning combination when he has it. So I'm just really interested in who that is.
I think he's also someone that doesn't mind winning a game 4-3, 3-2, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm personally staying away from Chelsea defenders overall. But let's get into another Chelsea defender here. Chilwell recently moved from Leicester last week. What was it? 50 mil was the final fee?
50 million pounds.
50 million pounds for Chilwell. A bit overpriced, but that's the English tax that you pay. Tazz, what are you thinking about Chilwell?
See, this is one of we mentioned before in the previous episode where you look at a team and if you're not gonna want to start off a risk on a player like Chilwell, but if you see Chelsea's performing well, a couple game weeks in, and you see like they're keeping clean sheets, they're tidy up back in the back, and playing a solid defense, then that's somebody I could definitely consider. Somebody I'll put on my watch list, but not start the season, especially since he's also kind of injured right now.
C4?
Yeah, it's to me just looking at him and then looking at all the other fullback options for Chelsea and looking at the transfers they brought in, it makes it attractive once I know who the attacking returns are going to come from in the Chelsea defense. Because if you look at that offense, it's going to be so explosive. Someone needs to feed them. So if it happens to be him, James, or Alonso even, I'll definitely want to have one of those in my team eventually.
I thought they were trying to move Alonso out. Is that still happening, or are they going to hold on to him?
Yeah, but if you look at their lineup, no one knows what's happening. Like,
right,
it's a lot different this year with preseason. Like, we don't have a set lineup of who's in and who's out. You can't really judge last, I think, week and a half now, preseason friendlies with all the international competitions happening. Right.
And especially Chelsea have pretty much a whole new team, so we'll see what they do there. Gash, how you feeling about Chilwell?
Yeah, he's still. I'm not really considering him at this point. I think the biggest question I have about Lampard is, was it really the players last season in the back, or is he just not really up to par in terms of coaching and defense, into a really organized shape? I think Chilwell could prove to be a decent player going forward. But I remember he was also dropped due to his form at one point last year for Leicester. So he's not immune to. He's not extremely consistent player like that. The one reservation I'd have mostly is the goalkeeper. If they do end up signing I think Mendy from Lyon is who they were looking at.
Mendy.
So if they do end up signing that would make me feel a little bit better. But I still wouldn't want a Chelsea defender at the start of the season.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's move on from Chelsea here, unless anybody has any final points. You guys good? All right, so let's move on from Chelsea to Everton. So Everton made a couple of big moves this week, signing James Rodriguez and Allen from. So we don't know James's price yet, but we can kind of guess. We were talking a little bit before we recorded. We're kind of anticipating between 8 and 8.5. I think most of us were saying. So are you guys considering James, and kind of give us your prediction for his price and at what price you would consider him if that's applicable? So Gash, you want to start us off with James Rodriguez?
Yeah, James Rodriguez is a hell of a player. From the World Cup in 2014 when he kind of first burst onto the scene, and then his couple of years at Real Madrid, you can really see the quality he has. I think he's a player who can really unlock another team's defense. And with the way Everton are, it's not like if James is playing at a Real Madrid, teams typically sit back against Real Madrid or higher teams like that where it might be harder. So I think playing at Everton, he'll have a lot more space to operate in, in like kind of the number 10 role with, runners flying past him. So he could really, have a really productive season. I'd put him, personally, I think he'd be 8 million if I had to guess. And I don't think I consider him at that price. Again, kind of like I mentioned with Havertz, he seems to be more of a player who will get, some goals and assists, but his biggest value will be bringing up the Everton team around him and might make, someone like Richarlison a more viable asset than he had been before.
Would you consider him at a lower price? Like some people are estimating maybe he'll drop to 7.5. Some people are even saying he'll be 7. I don't see that happening, but would you consider him at a lower price?
Yeah, definitely. If he were 7.5, then I think he'd have a pretty good shot of getting into my team.
Yeah, 7.5 is the number for me too. If he comes in at 7.5, I think I'll have to, especially considering when you look around that range, you got like Willian at 8. I definitely expect James to have a better year than Willian. So
yeah, right.
If they're priced similarly, there you go. Tazz, how you feeling about James?
Kind of same page with him as Gash. I believe he's gonna be around like 7.5, 8 million. 8 million is probably safer bet, but if he's at 7.5 million, I'll also consider him. I think the signing of him and Allen doesn't like. I'm not too interested in the transfers themselves and Allen and James, but I'm more interested in their strikers of Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, who are priced at 8 million and 7 million each respectively. And I believe that now with like a better midfield, more creative midfield in James, I could see Richarlison putting away or getting more chances and putting away more chances as well. So like that's somebody that now goes into my watch list. Same thing with Calvert-Lewin, who's at 7 million. Just to have 7.5 million more than some of these other cheap budget options that we're considering, that I believe now with like a better midfield, something to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely, yeah. C4.
I mean, I love the transfer. I think he'll do well if he's at 7.5. That's definitely someone I would want to have in my team. I just think when you look at how many viable midfield options, it's not necessarily realistic to try and get him into your team, especially if he does come in at 8. Like, are you really going to choose him over someone like Ziyech, who plays in an explosive Chelsea offense? To me, more so, the benefit there is it makes Charleston and DCL a lot more attractive as attacking options, which I think is where the bigger payoffs would come. If you look at him now feeding the ball to those two, I think DCL becomes a very viable option in that same hemisphere as like an Antonio. And when you look at their fixtures throughout, I guess, like the first 12, 13 weeks, if he gets settled quickly, I think that's a good move to bring in for Everton attacker.
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right, let's move on from Everton here. Let's move over to your favorite club, C4, Newcastle United. Y'all made some good signings. We got Ryan Fraser and Callum Wilson this week. So let's start with you, C4. How you feeling? You buzzing about the new signings?
I'm really happy today.
Yeah, you look it, man.
I mean, when you look at going into a season with either Joe Ellington or Andy Carroll as your starting striker, I think you're happy when Wilson signs for your team.
Yeah.
Especially I just want to shout out, I think the best marketing propaganda for Newcastle when he said he signed in part the movie Goal, which is the reason why I became a Newcastle fan. His son watches it and he loves it. But getting into more why we're here in terms of FPL with these two, I joke about it, but when you start looking at a 4-man attack of Wilson, Fraser, Almiron, and ASM, that's starting to look a little like viable, cheap options. I think Wilson and Fraser will come in and around the 7 million mark. But to me, I originally had ASM in my first draft of my team, but then I was getting worried of, who's he going to interact with offensively? Now you have another two players to enter that bunch, and I put ASM back into the draft of my team. I personally don't see Fraser and Wilson at 7.0 doing that well from an FPL perspective for players, but he'll boost someone like an ASM or an Almiron who are at a cheaper price point.
So right now I want to ask you, while you're excited and possibly a little delusional, what do these signings mean for Newcastle United? What place do you think they're going to finish real quick?
Came in, 14th last year?
13th, I believe. 13th last
Burnley
year.
was 13th. Okay, never mind. I think this, combined with Newcastle traditionally starts very poorly to begin the season, but this year, shorter break, better fixtures to start off the year. Christmas is hell, but who cares? We'll cross that bridge once we get there. I'm looking at 12th to 10th. Because to me,
ambitious.
What? They finished didn't they finish 11th the year before Brucey with?
I just thought you were gonna say something a little higher. I wanted to ask you today.
No,
I thought you'd say like 8th, maybe.
To me, what this means though is I don't think Mike Ashley is the one spending this money. I think this is signaling that someone's telling him, "Hey, we're still going to try buying the team, but we'll cover any transfers you make now to keep the team in the Premier League."
Could be,
That's what I think it means. Do you think Newcastle's finishing higher than 10th to 12th?
No, absolutely not. I just thought maybe you would.
Being a fan of a
keep going.
I'm just going to say, being a fan of a shitty team like Newcastle, or even in Canada, like the Maple Leafs, it teaches you to be really cautious with your expectations.
Oh yeah, I'm a Knicks fan in the NBA, so I definitely get that. But let's move back into FPL here. Gasch, how are you feeling about Fraser and Wilson? Will they be a deadly combo?
So first, let me say that C4 makes these little headlines scrolling across the bottom. Don't see them until they play the episodes. So
yeah,
I think
it's
a pretty accurate description of how he's feeling about these transfers.
Let's read it for those listening. It says
sure. So it says right. I got it. It says raining cats and dogs in Newcastle. The Toons signed Fraser and Wilson.
Yeah. So
you should see one of the other headlines I've ready.
Oh God.
Yeah. So looking at the players, I think it's it's a big question mark at the moment. While we're recording this episode, we don't have prices for either of the two. I think Fraser will come in a little bit cheaper than Wilson. I think Colin Wilson had that run of games at the start of last season where he was on fire and then didn't really do too much afterwards. If he's priced somewhere, the 6.5 to 7 million range, there aren't really too many strikers in that range right now, so it would make it really interesting. Any of your like Mitrovic's and your Adams and Bamford are all like 5.5, 6 million. So just another aspect to consider when you're building your team. I think that ASM, Fraser, Almiron, and Wilson all going forward could actually gel pretty well. Fraser he got a lot of assists, a few seasons back to Wilson. I think typically at Bournemouth he kind of played off the wing rather than a central creative role. So we'll see how that affects, because ASM and Almiron both like to play off the wing as well. So we'll see how they can kind of work together, if they can or not. But for the moment, I'm staying away. But if Newcastle start getting into form, I could look to pick up one of those two guys.
Yeah. Tazz?
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I don't think this is another case where like the transfers help bolster the other players already in the team. I would consider ASM more now because of these two transfers. It's kind of how like C4 mentioned before. You're thinking like, who is he gonna play along with? Where is he gonna get like his returns from? But now Wilson, who's a more he's not a top goal scorer like Ings or Vardy or Kane, but he is known to score goals. So I believe he'll help out that Newcastle team, and I'm more interested in ASM for Wilson. I see him coming in around like that 7 million. Last season he came in like 8 million and then dropped down through the course of the season. I think like to just like 7.3 or 4. So that to me just shows he's gonna just be 7 million, I believe. And then Fraser, I can see him 6.5, 7. I believe for those two players, that price range, there's somewhat better options, but I definitely considering ASM more now.
Yeah, kind of like the one thing I would, if there's one thing to kind of remember about each player, I would say Fraser. I don't think he's played a game since March, because I don't think he played post lockdown. He refused to sign a new contract with Bournemouth, so it might take him a little time to get to match fitness. Mm-hmm. And then C4, correct me if I'm wrong. So I know Colin Wilson got the number 9 for Newcastle. Was that Joe Linton last year that had that?
Yeah, and so to follow up on that, it's kind of a joke on the Newcastle subreddit. We don't know where he is right now. People are speculating that he's in quarantine, but like
Joe Linton?
At the moment we only had Andy Carroll in the preseason playing striker.
Are there rumors of him heading out? Anything concrete?
I mean, no, which is like the surprising part. Like you would think there would at least be some sort of update, but nothing on that. His numbers taken away. It's
that's a big sign right there.
He was a 40 million transfer last year. Like you're not getting close to that. So I could see maybe a loan there. But Gasch, just following up on one of the points you made, like you talk about, Fraser hasn't played since March, so it's like a concern, but you don't say the same thing about like a Ziyech, who, although he was training, he hasn't played a competitive match since lockdown.
No, I think that's an important consideration as well. The one thing I would worry is that if Fraser is almost like the mental state, because he refused. So the way I understand is he refused to sign the contract extension at Bournemouth to for basically the lockdown, and then Eddie Howe said, "All right, well, I'm not picking you anymore." So I don't know if he's typically one of those players that something like that would affect him or not, but it's just something to think about when starting off the season.
All right, moving from C4's favorite team over to Gash's favorite team, Manchester United last week signed VDB. I was going to try to say his name, but I didn't want to mess it up. Gash, how do you say it?
a lot of people are going to pronounce it Van de Beek, but I think the correct way to pronounce it is Van der Beek.
Okay, so Van der Beek. Does he fit into your FPL team? Why don't you start us off, Gash?
He does not. He's in my FPL team in my heart, but he's not going to be in my actual FPL team. And there are a few reasons why. So I think he's priced at $7 million, which I think is actually pretty fair. He was signed as cover for Bruno and Pogba, so he can play in that number 10 role and more of the number 8 role that Pogba plays. Sitting back as the not the deepest midfielder, but not the one the furthest forward. He gets into when he does play. He gets into the box a lot and, gets a lot of chances and scores and assists a lot as well. He had, I have the numbers right here. Last 3 seasons, he had 28 goals and 21 assists in 91 matches. So that's about a return every other game. I think his biggest, plus in terms of FPL could be if Bruno or Pogba get hurt, he would be the guy to step in and become the starter most likely. So he would be, he's, like I said before, he's priced at $7 million, so he'd be really good, like a Bruno backup to have there if Bruno is, does suffer from a long-term injury. But at the moment, at $7 million, I think I'd rather just spend the extra 0.5 to have Greenwood in my team. If Sancho doesn't end up signing for United.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think there's a chance United try to shift into a 3-man midfield with the 3 of them, with Pogba, Bruno, and VDB, or you think it's just a backup? Because that's an expensive backup.
Right. Well, I think one of the things was, if they didn't sign him, then the backup to Bruno would be Lingard or Pereira, and those are 2 players. Yeah. Right. I don't think if they could play a 3-man Van der Beek, my apologies to any of our Dutch listeners, Pogba and Bruno midfield, I think that would be really too unbalanced. So I think I could see them doing a 4-man midfield diamond with, Matic at the base and then Pogba and Van der Beek playing in the middle, and then Bruno as like the attacking midfielder. Maybe depending on the game.
That could be cool. Yeah. Tazz, what are your thoughts?
I think just for the price, he's a little bit too expensive. Maybe if he's more nailed on, and you can see like how they're playing the diamond formation, as Gash mentioned. Maybe then I consider him, but for $7 million for somebody that's not nailed on, it's too much of a risk.
Yeah, it's tough. I was really surprised to see him at 7, honestly. C4, how do you feel?
Just before this transfer, I was pretty high on VDB just from my FIFA 20 career modes. So I was a little shocked to see him go to United, considering even reading more stuff after the fact. Like, apparently he has a ridiculous record of drawing penalties for his club, which, based on how United worked last year.
That's why United signed him. Yeah. There we go. That's it.
Just talking to Gash about this during the break is, could he potentially force Ole to create a system under a 4-4-2 arrow? Because I just think he's too talented to be sitting on the bench in comparison to Greenwood. You already have 2 talented strikers at United. You can create a really solid 4-man midfield. If he does get nailed on, or like Gash said, if a Pogba or Fernandez get injured, I think he's the most attractive United midfield option all of a sudden. To have him at $7 million, I'd love that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it'd be really, really easy to if Bruno were to go down, to transfer him out for VDB, or if you had Pogba, the same thing. But
I'm saying even if he was like not because of an injury, if he was just starting, I would strongly consider just going Bruno straight to him or Rashford straight to him.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on VDB?
Love him.
All right, let's move on to a Wolves signing. Looks like maybe a replacement for Doherty, or maybe a replacement for Vinogre. Marçal, right? Marçal, maybe? I don't know. We don't know how to say it. But just got added. He's Portuguese. Yeah, how do we feel about him? Gash?
So I think I looked at some of his numbers earlier today. He is 5.0, which I think is pretty fair based on Wolves' defensive record last season. He hasn't been starting at wingback beforehand, so he played mostly at the left center back slot in a back 3 or back 5. If you consider the wingbacks part of it. So I don't think he would be necessarily a threat to Vinagre playing out on the left, or Johnny when he returns from his ACL injury. I think his, like I said, mainly is like center back cover in that spot. He's also 31 years old, so he's not really too much of a long-term solution. I really do think he's just, in there just in case of any emergencies happening. And the last thing I would say is that, the other thing you want to keep in mind is that Wolves have had a lot of pieces moving around with Doherty leaving. There are rumors about Vinagre moving away to Porto, and then Alex Telles coming in an exchange. So I would stay away for now. Just, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, Alex Telles is another FIFA career mode beast, if any of you were wondering. But yeah, that'd be interesting. So a lot still going on with Wolves. A very attractive defense to have, but hopefully they get it a little more sorted out in these next 5 days, because I want one of them. I just don't know who. Definitely need to get into that Wolves back line. Tazz, how do you feel?
Vinagre is somebody everyone's been considering for his price in the back Wolves lineup. Same thing with me in terms of I want Vinagre, but if there's too much commotion going on with the transfers and if he's leaving and stuff like that, it makes me a little bit more hesitant. But I think I'm still sticking with Vinagre for the price, and it's somebody so cheap. It would suck to have to use a transfer to transfer him out, but I'm planning on just having 2 4.5 million pound players just to transfer in and out depending on the game week. So I'm still risking out on him.
Yeah. C4?
I'm just going to put it in the ring. I think the proper pronunciation, Marcal. I kind of like that.
Marcal?
I like it. Sounds nice.
Does it have the little squiggly thing under the C?
So.
That's Portuguese,
I
right?
have no idea, but if he's coming into the Wolves defense and Vinegar is coming out, I need to give a new name to someone there. But I don't really have an opinion on him, just because if I'm looking at my template for my defense right now, I don't really have room for 5.0. And first thing I actually did this morning was take out Vinagre from my defense just because of all these rumors flying around. Like Taz touched on, it really sucked especially in that game week stretch from 2 to 4, to have to use a transfer on a defender. It's part of the reason why I think Wolves was so attractive last year from a defensive option besides Doherty, was there were so many sub 5.0 options that you could add. And now I don't want to take a risk on the only one who might start. You can't do an easy transfer to another one. So for that reason, I'm out. Shark Tank, call me if you want to sue me for using that line. But at this point, I'm not touching Wolves' defense.
Yeah, it's going to be something that I'm going to keep a really, really close eye on in these next 5 days. Like I said, I really want to get into that Wolves defense if I can, but it seems really messy right now. It seems really messy. So let's move on from the Wolves over to Leicester City. Another tough name to pronounce, Castagne. I don't know. How do you guys feel about him? C4?
So I looked up the pronunciation for his name before adding the banner, and sounded like lasagna. So I think it's pretty cool to have your last name rhyme with lasagna. But apart from that, I mean, I hate to turn this into about my team.
I'm just seeing the banner you got. Timothy Castagna. Does his name rhyme with lasagna? We can't tell. Is that really the banner you put, man? That doesn't. What does that tell about him?
I mean, he's coming from the Belgium league, so it'll be tough to see what his exact turnover is in terms of how he translates his talents to the Premier League. But in terms of how this affects the rest of the Leicester team in defense, again, took Justin out of my team this morning because of this. It's just we're having all these defender transfers come in that are ruining some of the 4.5 options for those top 6-8 teams. And, if he's coming in and he's taking over that left back spot where Justin could have played once Pereira came back, that's another transfer I don't want to have to waste on changing out a Leicester 4.5 defender.
Yeah, my defense looked so set 2 weeks ago, and now that might be a completely different defense. Gasch, how do you feel?
I think the biggest impact is, Castagna, if that's how it's actually pronounced, is 5.5 million. So I think the price is a little off-putting to me, with better options at 5.0 or 4.5. From what I've seen, I don't know how true this is, but, looking at some of the, what people have been saying about him, he can play either side of the back four. So he's, I think it's a signing by them that'll really help them with, depending on how Pereira's long-term injury goes. I think he's supposed to be back out until like late October, early November. So if anything, the thing that this does really makes me question more, bringing Justin at 4.5 million into my team. With the risk of being rotated more, or, not even getting as many minutes as we thought he would.
Tazz?
Yeah, same. I think it's another thing to see if he does maybe Castañez plays in the right back role, and then Justin plays in left back, or vice versa. If they fit them both in, I think Justin's pretty good at his price. Otherwise, I would consider anyone from Leicester for their defensive assets at their current prices. I just think there's better options elsewhere, as mentioned before.
Yeah. All right. Moving on one final time to Arsenal, to mine and Tazz's team. Ceballos is back on loan for another year. I would have liked to see a permanent transfer, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about FPL value. He's priced at 5 mil. Any consideration? I know he did really, really well post restart under Arteta. He played a crucial role in the FA Cup run and everything. Seems to be, Arsenal are linked with Partey and Aouar right now. I don't know how to say that either. But yeah, so Arsenal got some midfield links, but it does look like Ceballos is meant to play a big role. But is he going to play a big FPL role, Tazz?
I just think players like him don't score that many FPL points just because how far back they play. They're usually the pass before they assist. So I know that would kind of turn me off from him. But for 5 million, that's pretty cheap for if he's nailed on to start every week. Comes down to, would you rather have like a Ceballos or like another budget midfielder in that area? And maybe if Ceballos is in form and having those assists every other game type stuff, then I'll definitely bring him in, somebody to keep on my watch list, but not somebody I'm going to start off the season with.
Yeah, he does seem to be playing more of that number 8 role, but there has been some talk of him maybe sliding up to more of a number 10. We'll see if that happens. But Gasch, how you feeling?
Yeah, I'm not really too interested in Ceballos as an FPL option. I think, kind of like Taz mentioned, for that, for the price, I think there are, players I'd rather have in my team based on how far back he plays from where I'd want to see him on the field. So if he does move into a number 10 role, then that's certainly one to keep an eye on. Feeding Aubameyang could be a really helpful thing for an FPL player to have. But otherwise, right now, I'm not considering having him in my team.
C4?
I think kind of like how Taz touched on, like there's, you have ASM at 5.5, you have Armstrong in there, you have Souček if maybe he comes back from quarantine. I don't see him as a consideration for my FPL team, but man, like the way Arsenal and Chelsea are building this year, I could see a London team winning the Premier League. It's scary.
That's what I like to hear. Hopefully it's the red one, though. All right. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about Ceballos. I think he's one of those players that's just better in real life than in FPL. Yeah, so I'm a no for Ceballos right now. So let's move on to, you know what, real quick, I just wanted to touch upon Willian. He's at 8.0. Any worth there? He brought back more. He created more chances at Chelsea last year than any Arsenal player did last year. So, there's some talk of him playing that number 10 role and possibly feeding Aubameyang. 8.0 is a little high for me, so he's out for me. But Tazz, how do you feel?
I'm waiting for somebody I'll have to watch to see if he starts regularly and what kind of form he's in. It's somebody I would put on my watch list, but not start the season.
Gash?
No, he's not going to be on penalties maybe set free kicks at Arsenal, but at least not penalties for sure. So it's no.
Yeah. C4?
Yeah, if you look, there's a track record of Brazilian Chelsea players coming to Arsenal and performing like absolute shit. So no, he's not going into my team.
All right, I'm going to ignore that comment and move on to fan questions. We got one fan question in this week. As always, the day of recording, we'll post on Instagram and Twitter that we're looking for fan questions. So hit us up then. Or as always, you can call the hotline. There's a link in our bio. You can leave us a little voice message, and maybe we'll even play your voice message on the show. So shout out to Jake_O_S30 on Instagram. Jake asked, hold on, let me wait for the banner to come back around here. So yeah, Jake asked, who is your go-to captain? And out of the four of you, who will mess up their captain choices the most? Love the question. Love the question, Jake. Tazz, you want to start us off?
For me, last
so firstly, who's your go-to captain? Let's start with that.
Yeah, my go-to captain. Last season it was mostly KDB. This season I can see either KDB or Salah or any really of the premium fixtures, premium assets being viable captains. But I think for me it's gonna be KDB and Salah, and then
Gasch. We'll do the second question after
second later.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, it's got to be Salah. Just really consistent the last couple of seasons, and I think it's just, I don't want to try to get too cute and mess it up. It's just it's got to be Salah.
C4, you going through with that set and forget captain idea you told us about?
Probably, but if we're talking who my go-to captain is when they're nailed on, it's Sergio Aguero.
Wow. All right. And mine for the second half of last year was Auba. Before that, it was KDB. So probably gonna be one of them again. I'm probably gonna say KDB. Will be mine. And then who will mess up their captain picks the most out of the four of us? I don't think anybody's gonna vote for themselves, but let's Tazz, what do you think?
My thing, I think C4 will mess up. It's not mess up the most, but C4 is the one who goes for the biggest high risk, high rewards. Last season paid off more than you would expect to. So I feel like this season is going to catch up to him, and he's going to have a lot more, bad picks than just going safe.
The luck's got to run out sometime, right?
Yeah.
Gash?
So I think, Tomo, I think you're going to, mess up your captain picks the most because of your tendency to, miss setting your lineup. But I think the interesting thing to look at is in terms of, setting your lineup and picking the wrong captain. I think that's going to be C4 because, just like Tazz said, he goes for the explosive options. And I think he's going to try to look too hard into some choices and then, end up considering for hours and then picking the wrong one.
Yeah. C4, you agree with these opinions?
Okay, Tazz. Who last year was a risky captain choice that paid off for me? Come on.
I remember you captain Aguero and I favorable fixtures, and Aguero just scored. Those aren't very safe picks, but yeah. I mean, you did captain Son last game week of the season that cost you our mini league, so maybe it cut off you already.
Just to correct you there, I did not choose Son. That just happened when I set my my team too close to the deadline. I wasn't able to pick a captain because of all hell breaking loose with the Liverpool leak. But in terms of responding to that, I would just say everyone's talking about me reading too much into captain picks, spending hours picking one, when for all 4 episodes now, I've said I'm looking at a set and forget captain, meaning I won't be looking at different
but
captains.
that's because of mistakes you've made in the past.
I mean, I don't know this offhand, but I'm I think my captain picks did really well last year. I think that was because of good insight. Why wouldn't you captain Sergio Aguero?
Well, I think you captained him against. I'm making this up kind of, but I think it was against 2 top 6 teams.
Yeah, it's almost like Sergio Aguero's fixture proof. But okay, moving on to my answer of who I think is going to mess up their captain pick the most. Gasch already said Tomo because of the setting the lineup thing. I think that's kind of a boring answer. I'm going to go with Tazz. I think his top 4 finishes have been lucky as hell. And I think all hell's going to come raining down. So when we talk about triple captains and captains overall, my captain's going to outscore his. I believe it. I know it. We'll see it in writing soon when we finalize our triple captain bet. And everything's going to be good. Wait, right there again. You guys talk, overthinking captain picks. I've already said triple captain first week out of the way. But no, you guys want to wait, plan it out, strategic double game week, good fixtures, like everything
You're
you
gonna
guys
change
say.
your mind.
That's not overthinking. I'm not thinking
see.
about my triple captain yet.
Man, the best advice I could give is don't think.
Yep, don't think. Yeah, that's how I play FPL.
Let's see where C4 finishes this season.
And just for the sake of everybody getting chosen, I could see Gasch messing up his captain choices a lot. He thinks he knows it all in the bottom left corner of our screen right here. He's talking big game with his glasses and shit. So yeah, fuck you, Gasch. I think you're gonna make the most captain mistakes.
Can't wait to finish above you again, buddy.
Yeah, you got lucky as hell last time, man. All right, so yeah, speaking of mini leagues and finishing above people, join our mini league. As of recording, we're at 49 members. Let's make it an even 50, and let's keep going up from there. So the link's in our bio. Make sure you call the hotline. Stay following us on all social media. We'll be recording another episode real shortly to come out later in the week. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, everybody have a good week, and good luck setting your final teams. Later Tazz, later Gasch, and later C4. Thanks for being here, guys.
See ya.